I'm gonna be honest, I'm wearing a cutoff under this hoodie, and I decided to put the hoodie on because I don't think I'm at that point where I can wear a cutoff shirt in one of these videos. I wore one on stream the other day, but not one of these. Anyway, welcome back everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're gonna be talking about some of the new coaches that have been hired in the NBA this offseason. There's been a good amount of them. Almost a third of the league has hired a new coach, and I've talked about some of them individually, but I felt like this video would be a good way to not only rank how I feel about each of these hires, but also just kind of encompass all of my thoughts on every single coaching hire together in one video. I'm not super attached to the rankings. It's more so just a way for me to go through and kind of express how I feel about each one. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day, and for the most part, it's going to be 2 videos a day moving forward as well for most of the off season, just because there's so much stuff that I want to talk about. And also leaving a like rating is a great way to let me know that you're enjoying the content. It helps out the video a ton as well. And you can come hang out with me outside of the videos as well at twitch.tv/spolo_TD. It's a great place for everybody to kind of hang out, talk about trades, talk about the NBA, talk about whatever. It's a really, really good time. We're continuing to build momentum over there. If you guys want to come hang out, that would be really cool to see. You can also hang out in the Discord server that I've set up as well. The link to that is down in the description below. Again, another place where you guys can kind of hang out with the rest of the community and talk about whatever you want to outside of the videos and the streams. With all that stuff said, let's go and get started. Okay, so I'm going to go and start by talking about the Knicks and Cavs. Tom Thibodeau and JB Bickerstaff. I don't have anything to say. Those franchises, until further notice, are doomed to incompetence, and I don't really think the coaching hires are really going to make that big of a difference, if any. So we're just going to move on from them. And we're going to move on to talk about a team that it's not necessarily that I don't like the coach. It's just the whole decision-making process that went into the new coach really kind of bugs me. And it's the LA Clippers hiring Ty Lue. And if you want to make the argument that Doc Rivers deserved to be fired after losing the 3-1 lead, and the argument that there needs to be some accountability there with, you know, the organization, with the coaching staff for losing that 3-1 lead, for not making the conference finals with that roster, for the way they performed in that Nuggets series, I'm willing to listen to that argument. What I'm confused about is firing Doc Rivers, paying him all that money just to hire the guy that was on the bench for that blowing that 3-1 lead. That doesn't make any sense to me, and that speaks to an organization that maybe made a bit of a snap decision in firing Doc Rivers before really having an actual coherent plan moving forward, and then ending up hiring a guy that was maybe not as culpable, but was still right there when they blew that 3-1 lead. And I don't really know that teaches a whole lot about accountability. I think Ty Lue is a fine coach. I don't think he's anything, groundbreaking. I think he's a fine coach, and he'll probably do a fine job. But realistically, why didn't they just keep Doc Rivers? I don't really think that there's any difference made here. They're going to pay Doc Rivers all this money, and I don't think that Ty Lue is any better of a head coach than Ty Lue. So it's not really about the coach in terms of why they're technically at the bottom of this ranking, at least the teams that I'm actually bothering to rank. It's just more so about what was the point. And next up now, we go to a team that I actually really like the move, but there's just so much risk involved here that compared to the other coaching hires, you could make the case that this has the most potential for a disaster. And it's the Brooklyn Nets hiring Steve Nash, of course, my own team. I'm excited about this. I think it's a really cool and interesting kind of outside of the box move, and I'm all for that. But if you're looking at it strictly from a risk standpoint, this is a young head coach, a guy that has no experience as a head coach, and that would certainly make me nervous over some of the more established head coaches that were on the market. Now, I would imagine that a lot of this has to do with the relationship that he has with Kevin Durant and the relationship that he can build with Kyrie Irving, and they're building out a coaching staff there that I think is going to be able to do some really good things in Brooklyn. But if you're looking strictly at risk, I think it's fair to rank this towards the bottom of the list among these 6 head coaching hires that we're now going to be ranking throughout this video. So I respect and I appreciate the outside of the box thinking here. But the coach itself, even though I'm confident that it should go pretty well, at least on the offensive end of the floor and in terms of building connections and relationships within the team, still plenty of risk here. And I've been here before with the Jason Kidd thing with the Nets, and that didn't go well either. So we'll have to see. Next up now at number 4, I'm going to go with Stan Van Gundy of the New Orleans Pelicans. We talked about this on stream a ton because people continued to come in and ask, hey, what do you think about this? Because it's one of those things that happened while I was streaming. And my thoughts on Stan Van Gundy are basically, don't let him be in charge of the front office stuff. Don't let him make front office moves. Don't let him make personnel moves, which to this point, it appears as though the Pelicans are planning on continuing with a structure in which David Griffin makes all those decisions, and they're only trusting Stan Van Gundy to coach. Now, with that said, Van Gundy, again, similar to most of the other coaches on this list, I don't really think that he's like a big needle mover. Like, yeah, he's a veteran guy. He's, taken a team to the finals in Orlando. He's one of the trendsetters of the league before this whole 3-point revolution became so consistent across the league. Van Gundy was one of the guys that was kind of pioneering that, at least with that Orlando team, built some really good defensive teams as well there. in Orlando, and maybe you think that he is the guy for New Orleans. But I mean, they've had veteran coaches there before, like Alvin Gentry, and it didn't really work out all that well. Maybe you can make the case that Van Gundy is a better coach than Alvin Gentry, and you're probably right. So I would imagine it's an upgrade here, but I don't think it's anything groundbreaking. I don't think it's anything, incredibly impactful for them. I think it's an okay hire. Next up now, number 3, I'm going to go with Doc Rivers to Philadelphia. The only reason he's not higher on this list is the propensity that he has for blowing leads in the postseason and some of the struggles that his teams have had in the postseason and some of the talent that he's coached that haven't necessarily lived up to expectations. And so that is a concern for me because that is a pretty consistent theme amongst Philadelphia over the last handful of seasons, is a team that is talented, that has pieces that maybe don't fit super well together, but still have underperformed at various times over the last 2 to 3 years. And everything about the evaluation of Doc Rivers as the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers is going to be related to how well he can get Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons to coexist and how well he can get the rest of that roster to coexist in a way that actually helps them win basketball games. Because it's a tough roster to coach right now, I won't lie to you. There's some talent there, but it's a roster that, just doesn't really fit well together at all. Now, in terms of the hire itself, I think if anybody's going to be able to, quote unquote, fix the Embiid Simmons thing from a personality standpoint, I think Doc Rivers is the guy to do that. From an X's and O's standpoint, hopefully he just brings different ideas to the table that Brett Brown did, and that should, hopefully do the trick. If not, though, for him, from a personal standpoint, I think there's a lot of risk involved here. If 18 months from now the Sixers are still what they are, they might be moving on from Doc, they might be moving on from Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, and that's a pretty explosive situation. But I still think that Doc Rivers is at least a pretty good head coach. I think he's a better head coach than anybody that we talked about to this point in the video, and as a result, I'm going to rank him as the 3rd best hire this offseason in Philadelphia. At number 2 now for the Indiana Pacers, I'm going to go with Nate, and then the last name I'm going to struggle to pronounce correctly, but you guys know who I'm talking about. It is the former Toronto Raptors assistant coach that the Indiana Pacers have hired. And honestly, this is the only guy in the entire list other than Steve Nash that has never held a head coaching position. And so it's a little bit tough to kind of evaluate what he's bringing to the table. But what I will say is, one, I appreciate them not just getting a retread like Van Gundy or like Doc Rivers or whoever. I appreciate, again, them doing something different. But also, if you're going to pick an assistant coach from a team, I don't think you can do much better than Toronto. I mean, Nick Nurse has been an incredible coach for them over the last few seasons, obviously as an assistant himself originally. And if you're getting a mini version of Nick Nurse, that's a great guy to have in your coaching staff. Now, there's no guarantee that he's going to be at nearly the same level as Nick Nurse just because he was on the staff. But again, if you're looking at teams and organizations and franchises to poach staff from, I think Toronto is a great place to take a look at. And so that's why I'm ranking him at number 2 on these rankings. Even though we haven't ever seen this guy be a head coach in the NBA before, I do have high hopes. And at number 1 now is going to be Billy Donovan going to the Chicago Bulls. And there's a couple of reasons why he ranks number 1 on this list. One, I really like the fit there. I think he's someone that is going to work well with these younger players. We saw that once he got away from a situation with all of these, big time expectations in Oklahoma City, whether it be with KD or with Russ or Paul George, that wasn't a situation that was ideal for him. Someone that was used to coaching younger players in college, then being in charge of, all these grown men basically that are, 30 something years old. Now, we really saw once he transitioned to a situation in Oklahoma City where they had a lot more younger players on the roster, he thrived, and I thought he did a really good job as a coach last year, and that's a situation that he's going to be walking into there in Chicago. The other part of this, of course, is this is the biggest upgrade on the list. Going from Jim Boylan to Billy Donovan is the biggest upgrade on this list, and I don't think it's particularly close, which again, puts them higher up on this ranking. I think Chicago is a potential sleeper playoff team for next season because, again, the difference between Jim Boylan and Billy Donovan as a coach, even if you don't think Billy Donovan is a great coach, Jim Boylan was an absolute disaster for them. And I still think that there's a lot of talent on this roster, especially young talent, and not even including the pick that they're about to make here in a couple of weeks as well. All those things combined make Billy Donovan, in my opinion, the best offseason head coaching hire in the entire league. Now, again, as I said in the intro, I'm not, super connected to these rankings. If you guys have different ideas on who should be ranked where, that's fine. I just kind of wanted to give my thoughts on each of them. And honestly, I like a lot of them. I like the Chicago hire. I like the Indiana hire. I think the Philly hire can be good, not only for Doc Rivers, but Philadelphia. It's a bit risky for Doc specifically, but for the team, I don't think they could have done much better, to be completely honest. The Pelicans, Stan Van Gundy, I'm not really that invested. And the Clippers thing is the one that I like the least, just because I don't really understand the Ty Lue thing. And Steve Nash, who knows? Maybe Steve Nash is going to be a great coach. But again, I went through this with the Jason Kidd thing where I was excited. I thought it was going to work, and it just straight up didn't. So we'll kind of have to wait and see on all of these hires, and I could be completely wrong about every one of them. They could all be disasters, they could all be great hires, or they could all be a mixed bag. What we've learned, though, over the last couple of years in the NBA is that about 2/3 to half of these guys are going to get canned here in the next couple of years. So being a little bit more pessimistic on this list, I think long-term is going to probably prove me right more than wrong, I would imagine. But yeah, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Starker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.